All set. How are you? Thanks for coming. I guess we're going to go over the new name. I have a hard time remembering the new name.
Routeware.
Routeware. Got it. I just asked Frank before we came out, and I forgot. So I guess we'll leave it up to you, Eileen, and you can start.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. We appreciate the opportunity to come here before council and talk about Rubicon, now currently called Routeware. IT Director Reager will kick us off and step through some information we have about Rubicon and how it's going, and the rest of us will be able to fill in and answer questions if you have any.
Great, thank you. So we've chatted a few times over the last year or two about Rubicon, and we're hoping tonight that we can go through any pieces that are left sort of hanging out there and talk a little bit about optimization and talk at a high level about the renewal that's coming through as well. So we'll walk through. So where we sit today, based on feedback, and I know Mr. Schuster and Mr. McAndrew, you both, as well as all of council, had brought up about the renewal and making sure that we're not dealing with professional services or leveraging the company now beyond their time. So when we worked through the renewal this year, we focused only on software renewal. We are going to use our own devices, so you'll note in the first contract we were paying for devices as well as professional services. Both of those have been eliminated. We have not entered into a contract at this point in time. You'll note by the screen, this is a software agreement at this point in time. Our original contract, when it came to council, does talk about a year-over-year renewal. So with what we're looking at today, we're moving to a software renewal. There is really just the negotiation around price about what we were willing to retain or not retain. We sent a previous question that we're around $32,000 and change for next year. It is, again, the software only. There is no hardware cost built into that. It is basically the same as using Granicus or Microsoft Office on a daily basis for us.
So the hardware, it's similar to an iPhone, or they are using iPhones?
We are using iPads today in the vehicle.
iPads, okay.
Yep.
So moving forward, the city's going to purchase the iPads and we're going to be using...
We already have. It was more cost conscious for us to keep those.
Okay.
Wait, so you're telling me that we didn't retain the devices? I thought in the contract we were supposed to.
No, we chose not to. That's how we were able to reduce cost. We moved away from professional services and hardware.
But we did own them.
Well, we did not own them. They were leased. That was
were
part of the
also
original
leased?
contract. Yep.
Jack, is it fair to say that Rubicon didn't exactly roll out smoothly? Is that
Absolutely fair.
Fair statement?
Yep.
Okay. Let me ask you this. Would Rubicon admit that?
Absolutely. Yes.
They would.
Yep.
That being said, are we in a negotiating situation with them whereby we can say, listen, you know, both you and we agree this was flawed. Let's face it. I mean, there were a lot of issues with Rubicon. I just wonder whether they now would be willing to negotiate that number down, if for nothing else, based on sins of the past. I don't know. I would.
It's very fair. The number's down $17,500 as a result of that.
It's down 17.5
5.
as it exists.
Our number, yes.
So in other words, if everything went perfect,
We would have been at 50 plus for this renewal.
we would.
And that 17,005 is down just in software?
Yes. Yep. And they also, as you know, they came out, I think, 3 times on site last year at no cost. They did all the additional trainings. You know, I absolutely can appreciate that we needed more from them. I think even, you know, the team here can admit they bent over backwards for us. So from that standpoint, what we were bumping into were adoption issues. I think there's been a massive swing now that folks have seen this system working over time. Going through fourth quarter of last year, and even today, we still have weekly calls with their team post-rollout to make sure everything's aligned. Are you guys happy with what you have? Is there anything else we need to do? They're beyond vested. So I appreciate the note, and absolutely that's the approach the city took. We weren't going to pay full freight for something that did not meet expectations.
But we were told all along they were doing a great job. I was here before Rubicon. I was here and voted against Rubicon for the simple fact it was sold to me and us, the members that were sitting up here. It's going to save $1 million the first year. We didn't get any savings. Let's be realistic. And then it was rolled out twice, and both times in the summer, end of June, early July. Garbage sat for weeks. They haven't demonstrated to me that their value at all. And I incurred a similar situation when I was on school board. There was another company called TransFinder. The same promises and the same outcomes. Nothing was saved. It's almost like Groundhog Day. And I think it was rolled out the third time. What was that, January? This year? It was the third time it was rolled out?
Second time, it was December 9th.
Well, okay, the third time in 3 years. And it never met the timeline. I have a copy of that here. It just never did. And I remember them come in and explain everything, and then they switched managers, and they just didn't demonstrate to me what they promised. Because I have some questions. So even after they did all this data collection that they said they needed to do, was only supposed to be in a certain period of time, they claimed they needed to do this data collection for over 2 years to roll it out. So, I mean, they didn't follow the timeline. We paid a lot of money, well, I didn't vote, I voted no, but we paid a lot of money for, and we didn't get the return in our investment. And then answer me this. So even after we went through all this, and they came and they did this, and they did the data collection, and and for the most part, and then the reports are just tonnage reports that we could have got from the landfill. Easily got from the landfill. But after all said and done, did DPW drivers drive around on overtime 3 times to map every street and take pictures because Rubicon could not map the courts and alleys?
So
Did that occur?
we'll walk you through the process. Drivers did go out on overtime to test the routes, to preview the routes, because there was concern that their routes were changing so drastically. So the drivers this time around were very highly involved, yes.
And
But-
Councilman, if I could just, I know, I've heard you mention the $1 million savings before, so I'm not sure where that originated from.
That originated from the head of DPW who sold it to us the first time.
Previous head.
Correct.
Well, so we have 1.4 million in landfill costs. That's what our costs are. So $1 million in savings would just not be plausible in this type of system.
But do we have any savings? Any
that was-
tangible savings?
Well,
That you can actually show us?
So we actually struggle in DPW to show any savings because prior to Rubicon, we had no record system. So we have no baseline to be able to say what we were doing. So it's really, we struggle with that point. We had no tracking of fuel. Our maintenance tracking was very poor. So those baseline pieces, we don't have to be able to say definitively going forward. Now that we have Rubicon, we can start tracking, but prior to that, it's very hard because there's no baseline.
Jack, would it be possible to go back to these guys and say, listen, we went through a difficult rollout of Rubicon to the point where, like, is it fully functioning right now?
Yes.
Yes.
Scott, if you want to share some of your anecdotal.
Let me just ask this, Scott, before you start. For how long has it been fully functioning? And then what I would want to propose is to go back to them and say, listen, you knocked that first year down to 22,000, and if we have a successful year, we'll bump the last 2 years up to 37 and 37. And that way, they got to prove themselves the first year. Just a thought. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Scott.
Well, no, so as we're going to cover here in the slides moving forward, but we rolled out December 9th of 2024. This was a date chosen by the drivers after they had gotten comfortable with the routes, as we had previously spoken of. They previewed their routes as they were newly assembled and optimized, and they wanted to choose this time because, one, it gave them a couple of weeks before a holiday to get used to their new routes. Two, we throw in the New Year's and Christmas holiday, which is always traditionally excessively heavy, so we can see how that works with the new routes. Any tweaks, any modifications that need to be made, they can be made. And then three, rolling into the new year, we can get comfortable with those tweaks and modifications that we made. And in the 2 months now, as of the 9th, which was Sunday, we have seen an extensive and just impressive collection of data that shows that this is working tremendously. From the boots on the ground drivers and collectors that are out there every single day utilizing it, administratively wise, the amount of calls from residents that we're receiving have disappeared compared to 2 months ago when we were still, messing around with it, doing some old routes, fixing some certain things. And we've gotten tremendous feedback from residents who we traditionally got a ton of calls from. And it is working. It's going very well.
I think one of the easiest analogies I can give you, I know we've struggled to sort of make this a thing in a box. If I asked any of you to ride or drive a garbage route tomorrow morning, where would you start?
If you ask,
If I asked you to drive a garbage route tomorrow, where would you start? What would be the first thing that you did as a driver, a substitute driver?
well, I'd start at my house.
Right, that's fair.
But guess what? That's not my wheelhouse.
But however, we have 41 drivers that at any given time can be asked to run a garbage route. There was no way that these folks, and we have some driver quotes at the end of this, they get it now. Hey, I can step into a driver's seat here and drive my route for the day. I can't put a dollar amount on that, but he's not getting out of the vehicle, which I didn't realize happened, to ask the laborer on the back, where do we go next? So we've eliminated that.
Yeah, so previous to this, call them napkin routes or something, paper routes, all right? So these routes have been passed down. It's like a generational thing that like your grandma's sauce recipe, right? These are how these, and the analogy is what it is. These are how these routes were passed from driver to driver, right? So, hey, we're gonna go here, you're gonna take this route, this is how you get around this neighborhood, you're gonna start in North Scranton, you're gonna finish in South Scranton. Completely inefficient, hard to do. If somebody came in to drive it, they'd have to have the guy, hopefully, that was on that truck every day to guide them through the route, as Jack was saying. Any one of these drivers, these 41 CDLs that we have in the DPW currently, they're not all drivers. They're laborers. They're collectors who are actually on the back of the truck that have their CDLs. They're any sort of our highways department people that are out there on heavy equipment operators driving other machines all day. And as our number one priority is to get the refuse and recycling off the streets every day, correct? So we need to backfill if we get 26 call-offs on a day that we didn't expect, right? We have an uptick in call-offs. We can backfill with any one of those people to provide this service to the city, and anyone, including myself, yourself, any of the drivers in that building can hop in a truck, turn the iPad on, and they will be able to hit every single resident that they are supposed to hit that day with complete success. That is the advantage of this system.
And we've seen it.
And it works.
Okay, so I'm
The
glad
previous rollouts, I get that there was some bad blood and there were some not well taken things, but we can't live in the past on those. I understand where you're coming from, and I completely respect it. But currently, the union, the employees are all bought in, operating efficiently, coming and working with management and the IT professionals here that we have in the city to make this as flawless as it can be on a daily basis.
So with that said, like, you pretty much all said, okay, everybody's on board now. Because I know in the beginning they were blaming unions, and that's not always the right thing to do. But if everybody's on board collaboratively, and you're saying things are working great, and we bought our own new devices, can't you wizards in IT, can we do it on our own now? Because supposedly we have all the data. I'm not trying to put any extra work on you, but I'm still not happy with the performance and the amount of money we spend and the return we got. So if everybody's where they need to be now, why can't we do it ourselves?
Right, and that's fair. And unfortunately, that's what happens in software. When we started down this path without management tools to combat that or make sure we had institutional knowledge, we went and got a software to do it. And this predates all of us. We can't just turn this off and be able to perform the roles the way we do today. For a simple reason, it's Pac-Man dots. I couldn't tell you how we set up a geolocator to drive a garbage truck around and pop those dots on a map for us. It's not something we can do without the software. We're going to do it without the added professional cost. We're going to do it without their hardware. We're going to do it without their upsells as they come in. We are baseline. Let's go do the job and work through and collect the data. And I'd love to tell you we can cut costs there. Unfortunately, we're not in that spot.
So we're no longer required to pay $250 an hour for any supplemental?
We are not.
Because that was in the original contract.
Yep. If they hear from us, it will be that something has broken and they will fix it at no cost to us. That's where we are at with them. Think of it like Granicus, think of it like Microsoft. We can't turn it off. It's a software for us now.
What would be the hurdles with other softwares out there? Like,
Right,
just
so-
transferring all that data and information that we've now collected through
we
Rubicon?
right.
Or
So
starting fresh, or where, how does?
we would start at square one. You know, I think towards the end of this year, the beginning of next, not to be a big spoiler, but we'll have a conversation about OpenGov. OpenGov's financial system in this city is basically oxygen. We cannot move to another system. Take that same concept and think about this. They have all of our data. Yes, we can get the data back. Then we have to find a new vendor. We have to find a new vendor to do it cheaper. We have to retrain everybody who's touched this thing. It's not something, I would love to tell you that we can go back and choose a better path, a different path. Honestly, I don't see a better path. I've looked at what's out there. Cost-wise, this is still cheaper than the competitors that we've seen. It's something that clearly these folks have identified there's a need for municipal government to utilize these types of systems, and they sort of have you. It's my job to keep it as minimal as humanly possible while making this a very workable tool for the team. The reality is, and much like PD, we have put so much technology into roles that weren't technically focused over time. Adoption is difficult. We all deal with it. I get a new phone and it's like, what do I have to do now to make this work? And I'm the guy that should know that. The components of adoption when we're adding technology to roles that typically didn't use it, but we still see huge upside when they start utilizing it, that's what we've been negotiating over the last 2 years. And that's why it's very difficult. You know, what if it wasn't this? Where do we go? And it is not, I don't mind a hard job. I don't mind doing the work. But if we're going to find ourselves in a spot where it might not be adopted and it's going to cost us more, the downside's a little too much.
Okay, I just want to know what our
Totally good.
options
Yep.
are. And are we confident in the stability of this company? Like, I know there's been a lot of, changes over the past few years while we've had them.
Yep. This was the big fish swallowing up the smaller fish. So Routeware actually pitched the city, and it was too expensive. So working through the renewal, they explained flat out, you guys are in a price tier that's not us. So it's a different organization, way more capacity, way more people. It's the same tool Boston uses, but we're getting it at Rubicon rate, which to be fair, I don't think any of us are happy paying for something that we're not totally thrilled with. At this point, I would say we're in a much different atmosphere than we were. I honestly always thought this was more of an opportunity for how could we leverage the tool differently. Fast forward this integration, and you can absolutely see it now. It's something where they're using it appropriately. We don't have to worry about, the pieces that, are soft skills. Who's going to pick up a route? Are we compliant with EPA regulations? Are we tagging, the garbage on the side of the road to a point where LIPS can go and give this household a ticket at that point in time? We have those pieces. We didn't have that before, or the buy-in on both sides of the coin.
So in other words, it's just like many programs that I've tried to roll out as a school district superintendent or principal. it's about people and not programs at the end of the day. I've always said you could have the best program, most wonderful curriculum, whatever it might be, but if it's not rolled out with fidelity and people aren't willing to accept it and roll it out or teach it or accept it and use it as it was intended to be used, you're going to, it's bound to fail. So you're saying that now, at this point in time, we've gotten over the hump, we've gotten through the challenges, and now it seems like the troops, all of our guys, women, they've embraced it and are now kind of relying on it, and it's working?
Yeah, I believe that's 100% the direction we are in, on, and moving forward with. I don't think that was exactly how it was rolled out in the past, and even the most perfect plan doesn't go the way you want it to the second, you press go. This one, I mean, we have a fantastic group of people down there. The men and women of the DPW are tremendous workers. They break their backs every day for the city to do the right thing, and they just wanted to be heard throughout the process. I don't think that was exactly happening the way it should have previously, but like I said, they've been involved tremendously in just the short 6 months I've been down there in this entire process. They're the ones who are helping us course correct every chance we get, because they're the ones with boots on the ground every day. I wouldn't do this on my own. Jack wouldn't do this on his own, because we're not on the trucks every day. We're not driving the routes every day. These guys are the professionals that are out there doing this every day, so we rely on them to make these corrections, and by and large, there's been very little corrections that have had to be made since optimization and since we've adopted this new thought process of working through it. And yeah, there were bumps in the past 2 months. There were. But we sit down with the drivers almost every single day and work them out to the point where we don't need to do that as much anymore. And if they have an issue, they come to us, and it's usually just a quick, this person gets picked up in the alley as opposed to the street, and we shift that and it's corrected, and we don't get that phone call anymore. We don't have residents calling us weekly saying, my trash is missed, you guys, this is a slight. No, it's a problem that we fixed, and through this software, we've made it better for both the end user, which is the resident, which is what we do this for, as well as the employees on a day-to-day basis that are out there breaking their backs for the city. We're trying to make it easier, more efficient, and more beneficial to the city, not just the employees, but when it comes to our fleet, when it comes to everything that we think about in this entire process. The overweight tickets at the dump, things of that nature, they're disappearing. This is working.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Scott, how many, you said on your last slide there, I saw, you said, we have 26 drivers, 26 vehicles out there, or?
No,
15 plus 4.
Yeah.
26 is the average call-off, 26 individuals.
It was a high call-off
When it's-
in August.
Oh,
No,
you
that's
meant-
the average.
oh, it's not how many trucks we have.
no. So we have 15 refuse trucks for
Oh,
recycling.
Okay, so, and then we have
An average
41
of
total people.
15 to 16 out there every day.
And we, okay, but only, the amount of drivers we need every day is 15 to 16?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, okay.
So as of December 9th, the optimized routes started. They began. Drivers are driving them as
Yes.
of that date.
Yes.
Some tweaks and things have occurred in the
Correct.
last 2 months, as you said.
Yep.
Are we still working on tweaks, or are we at where we need to be right now in terms of?
No, it seems we've gotten over that hump a few weeks back, actually. There were some issues in one section of the city, and to be honest with you, it wasn't too much. It was people and software-based, right? When you get a lot of people maneuvering throughout the city on new routes, little things go under the radar. Like I said, a person who's driving a new block may not know the trash is picked up in the court as opposed to the street side, things of that nature. And those are quick changes that can be made the day of and can be rectified. And there's just little tiny tweaks and little things like that that had to be made. But overall, like I said, the communication between the management staff and the boots on the ground staff, the guys that are out there every day, has been tremendous. And they're the ones that are really helping guide this to make it work. It's not me willing them to make it work. It's them coming to me and saying, and our the rest of our team, and saying, listen, this is what needs to happen. Quick fix here, quick shift there. their route's great. And if anything does come up, it's as simple as a quick conversation, and it's fixed for the resident.
So at this point, if there's any tweaks to be made, they're just small tweaks.
Yeah, it's been like that for basically since the Christmas, New Year's holiday around there. That first month, once we hit the holiday patch, everybody knows it's going to be busy, it's going to be heavier, more hectic, especially with all those holiday days off. We're playing catch up a lot of times, you know that. So that's where we ran into our biggest, I don't want to call them issues, but hurdle to jump over, and we knew that was coming. So we were all hands on deck, and we worked through those 2 weeks, and man, it's night and day, night and day.
So at this point, are we using the Rubicon turn-by-turn system, or has that been part of the tweaks that were made?
So the drivers, yes, they're using the turn-by-turn when it suits them and when it's needed, and other times you make a judgment call. They're professionals, they know their routes, they know how to efficiently get around their neighborhoods, and those are some of the tweaks that are made, right? Through those overtime shifts that we're talking about when they preview their routes, they called those things out so that we could correct them prior to. Again, technology isn't perfect, people aren't perfect, right? The technology isn't going to mirror everything we want it to mirror, but the people are there to help us fix those deficiencies, and we did a lot of that heavy lifting before our launch date, so not a lot had to be done post-launch date.
Okay, so at times the turn-by-turn isn't the most accurate, and we're using driver input, driver information to make those routes and collect on streets and in courts and in places that collection needs to happen.
Yeah, I mean,
But
if
they're
you
not
drove
always
from here to
using-
Wilkes-Barre and you put it in your GPS, I bet you know 2 or 3 ways that'd get you there a little quicker if you took a different street rather than following the GPS exactly, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was a mailman for a little while, and the
Well, there you
routes were
go.
already established. I could get on a new route in a new city, down in Old Forge, somewhere else, that I've never been in, and those routes were established probably since the 1960s, so I
Yeah.
know what it's like to jump in a truck and take a route.
Exactly, yeah.
So the turn-by-turn system, can the turn-by-turn system be changed?
Yeah.
So say the system isn't, it's routing you through a street that doesn't exist. Can IT change that system to
Yeah, that's
finally
part-
get it to
And-
where it is most accurate?
Yep, absolutely. And Wayne, the refuse manager down at DPW, can do it as well. One of the big changes this time that we handled the implementation, again, when it was done previously, it wasn't done with all the stakeholders at the table, we'll say. Our folks were sitting, waiting for the drivers to come back every day for 2 weeks, and as we found those adjustments, they were made in real time. It helps the drivers see the commitment and understand that, this will be something that we're learning from you as we go through. As that was happening, there was a change down at DPW. We have a new, I'm going to get his title wrong, refuse supervisor. It came in. He was trained up as well on the tool set and how it functioned. So we have probably about 7 people that can make those edits in real time and tweak as needed.
And when
So-
I
so
talk
if a
about
driver
those
gets-
changes that are occurring, that's usually Wayne after the
Right.
initial first lift where it was IT, management, and the drivers every day. Once Wayne was up to date with everything, the drivers just come to him, say, move this pin here, move this pin there, cut that alley off because they put their stuff on the street now. He can do that in real time on his laptop.
Yeah, so if a driver hits a street that the system is showing him there's a street that's there, that the street isn't there, you can now change in the system to put the actual street that's there. So
100%.
next time that driver takes that route, the turn-by-turn is going to take him on a street that's there physically?
Yes, that's 100% correct, and a lot of those changes have already been made, done for weeks at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Wayne, how long has Wayne been there at this point?
Wayne started on Halloween or the day prior. I can't remember exactly. October, that first Monday last week of October.
Okay.
Yeah.
Scott,
Sir.
the trucks now, can I turn my iPad on and look and see where each truck is? Is it GPSed? Is
Yes.
it live?
Well,
Oh,
Well,
he's got to use the keyboard then and jump in. You wanna
yeah,
do it?
it's not exactly live. These are just pictures. But yes, if
so,
you.
but you could, real
if-
time, you could turn your iPad on and see where
Oh,
your
yeah,
trucks
if I
are?
have my laptop, he could probably pop it up here, but every day, first thing I do is I come in, I see what routes we got, which section of the city we're going, and Wayne does this as well, see what drivers we have, what replacements need to be made or not made, and then you can actively see when these drivers are moving, they're going, like where they are to the exact 30 seconds. you
Okay,
know?
so when they have a correction to be made, so say, and your GPS, is this all recorded?
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
is it kept on downloaded for a year, a day, so that when you
I don't
make
know
the
the length
correction...
of the server
It's
life.
90 days that it's
90 days,
kept
so
out
if you
there.
make a correction, the next day, you'll be able to see it on
Absolutely.
the site, okay.
Yeah. And so this is the way we actually utilize while Pete gets that up. Different issues that we may run into now, they are either when it comes to weight or tracking a late put out or any sort of issues that our staff may run into while they're out on the road. These things can be captured by the stop, by the address number, pin dropped, picture taken, description written in the app. They press enter, and then they continue on their route. So that's in there, and then they can either make a call in, or Wayne can identify it and report that straight to whatever department needs to be made aware, whether it's a health and safety issue for lips or quality of life, if there's a potential safety problem when it comes to like fire or police and somebody needs to be made aware of it, things of those natures. We encounter those a lot, you know, and they can immediately be pushed to that next echelon of attention that they need to get to, instead of a driver trying to fight over the radio to talk to the dispatcher, to pass it up to me, for me to make a decision. It's made, it's in there, it's done, and it's reported up the chain instantly. It's amazing, actually. These guys, and I mean, anecdotally, I could tell you 1,000 stories, but these guys really appreciate it because they're being heard. We get calls, oh, you missed my trash. The truck went by every time it's been going by for the past 15 years, and your trash wasn't out there. We have a picture. Our driver posted it. It covers our drivers and their responsibilities and what they're doing, while also allowing us to say to the resident, listen, you know, we can come back and get that now, but the main issue was your trash wasn't out when it was supposed to be out, or anything along those lines. Safety issues when it comes to the fleet maintenance. You got it up? Getting there? All right. If something were to occur, let's say there's a road deficiency, whether pothole or some sort of safety issue on the road that affects our vehicle, the driver can get out, take a picture of that, post it. We can identify that, get the correct mechanics and everything out there. That's in our records, though, for what happened. Have a replacement truck, the rest of our fleet, get driven out to them, and then we take that other truck back for the maintenance that it needs, and they can continue on their route. Things of those natures.
We talked about sort of the punchline of optimization, and that was another thing with the driver quotes at the end. One of the things that has happened with optimization is all routes are created equal. And that would seem like, well, you know, that makes sense. It's equitable for everybody then. It previously wasn't. There were large swings in terms of hours between route durations. So through optimization, you're not going to Green Ridge and later that same route going to South Side. So that has all been eliminated, and that's basically how these routes used to operate. So when those changes get made, and part of, as we listen to drivers, you know, period, we didn't necessarily do that with the last group that deployed. We're listening to them. They're seeing that everybody's being treated equally. There's not, you know, two tiers within the driver community down there. It really helped adoption, and what we're seeing is just a better, well-rounded product in the end.
When we're talking about the changing in the routes, are there any major time shifts for certain areas that residents should be aware of? Like, say, someone in Southside was getting their garbage picked up at 7:15, you know, for the last 20 years, and now it's going to be at 2 p.m. Any major shifts like that?
Well, no, there won't be shifts where they're hours and hours apart. I mean, most of our staff can get their runs done within a few hours, depending on wait times at the dump, as well as how they are going about the most efficient way they've set up their route to be taken care of. So, I mean, if you put your trash out at 7:15, and it's not going to be picked up at 2, I mean, I think, you know, an hour or so window around that area. But to each driver, they adopt the best method to take down these neighborhoods and accomplish their job on a daily basis that works for them. I mean, they're not forgetting grandma's trash and leaving it out there until 1 o'clock, because they're not out there till 1 o'clock. They're at the dump. They're finished with their route. They're at the yard PMing their trucks, which is a thing we have now to keep us in compliance with the EPA regulations, taking care of their vehicles, keeping up with maintenance of them, things of that nature. So the window for collection is still going to be that early morning to mid-morning timeframe.
Yeah, I was just trying to alleviate phone calls that you might get to put it out there now to
No,
say,
and I get that,
You know,
like-
if Southside, again, any area of the city, if there's a big major switch,
Southside's a hard one. That was where our biggest issues were, because Southside is such a densely packed area with a lot of courts, a lot of alleys, a lot of people that have been, putting it out in the court for 20 years, and we need to make those adjustments. Those are part of those small tweaks I talked to you about, and Wayne can make those switches, boom, boom, from the front of the house to the back of the house. The driver now knows they have to go up the court.
And Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, and I know Mr. McAndrew and I think all of council, if you've heard residents' complaints or issues, just have them call dispatch. It's a real-time tweak, and then at least it can be logged and worked through. And again, it could be something where somebody was just missed, they got their garbage out late, and I know Scott and Wayne have been great. They don't, and even, the drivers, they're going to go back and get that garbage. They're not going to leave it on the curb. So as much as if you hear anything, the note is always just call dispatch, and they do what they do.
I'm glad you put that out there. Like I said, I was trying to help you out there by,
Yep.
if there was major changes, you can get it out there now, and then maybe you won't get phone calls from those areas.
Well, a lot of those things have already been addressed. I mean, compared to September through early December when we launched, when I started, we're getting 20-plus calls a day, at least to just myself, of either missed trash, haven't picked up, or aren't at our house yet, or whatever it may be. I don't see any voicemails anymore.
Do you
I
have-
don't have those things coming across my desk anymore. The dispatcher, if we do have a couple misses here and there, as he said, in real time, we can make those adjustments. It's 2, 3 a day, and the truck's still out on the route, so he just goes back around the block, picks up that trash or that recycling, and carries on with his day.
Do you have the numbers on
I'm
that?
sorry.
Do you have the numbers on that you're able to show us? Because I remember early on in the conversations with Rubicon that they did have some of that data for like returns to properties, or I don't know if they're called
I
go-backs.
could pull.
And so I just curious to see like the trend in what it was, how frequently we were having drivers return to properties, say, throughout the week or whenever you're
Yeah,
calculating
unless
that
it's a
to
quality
now.
of life or something we can't pick up, such as construction material, we can pull misses off of this, and I don't know about returns, but every miss that's not something that's an issue that needs code enforcement's attention, we go back to every day. So,
Because I think that was where the part of what was going to happen with Rubicon was the increased efficiency with that and some of those promised cost savings.
You're correct,
through that.
Councilwoman, because there was a number that they had put on what was the value or the cost to go back, right? So there was that number. And I can't remember it off the top of my head, but as those go down, then we don't incur that cost.
Yeah, I feel like the number was either $63 or $48 per
Yeah, I
go
think
back,
it was
and
in
you
that
guys did.
ballpark, but I don't remember it clearly right now.
well, and the beauty of these optimized routes is that when you're not going from Greenridge to Southside or West Scranton to East Mountain every day, or for the different pickups, you're still in that neighborhood. So if you have a missed house or something like that, and you have 400 pickups on the west side from Bryn Mawr and Orem in that area, you're probably still a couple blocks away. So you're not driving across Main Ave down Elm Street, or I guess the detour now, and fighting your way back to that side of the city at a different time during the day. You're going 2-3 blocks over and picking up. You're a neighborhood route basically now. And I know they were neighborhood routes, but you're centrally located. You're not running across the city. And we had drivers that were going to 2 or 3 different sections of the city at times, which was insane.
I talked about the turn-by-turn before, so Rubicon put out a turn-by-turn, and some of those, there was corrections made in the turn-by-turn that we were using driver input. So the drivers were using some of the routes that they might have already had optimized themselves. Is the system now running a lot of the driver's original routes, or is it a combination of the two? How did we do it
So
with the routes?
the optimized routes were launched, and then in those first few weeks, as I talked about the little fixes we made, there are certain things, again, no plan is perfect, but the driver said, hey, it would be better if I went horizontally down these instead of vertically, right? Instead of going up Orem and then back down the next street, and you go across, I forget that street name, but you can go across in the alleyways and the cross streets because of the one-ways or whatever it may be, where people put their trash, and it's a lot easier. And we switch those pins, and the drivers are allowing us to do that. They're picking up the same area in a similar efficiency pattern. We just switch some directional changes, some certain things of that nature. So, yeah, yes, driver input is huge. We're utilizing the optimized routes with the expertise of the professionals that are on the ground every day doing their job.
And you also have to add the, Scott and his management team and IT and the folks from IT have done a really good job resetting, going back, getting the input from all the people that work there, and doing a really good job at getting this launched and under control. So, hats off to the work that they've done to get this to the point that it's at now.
I did have one more question, but I'll save it till the end. I didn't know if there was something that you
Well,
guys... that
you might
wanted
as well
to
keep firing. That presentation laptop's not going to put us on it, so keep going.
One of the aspects of Rubicon was a diagnostic
Yes.
aspect.
Yep.
When it was proposed, it said, we could pull diagnostics from the trucks, let you know how much oil
Yep.
we're going, are we running on all cylinders? Are there any
faults?
kind of
Yep.
misfires or things that are happening? How is the maintenance aspect of Rubicon working out?
So I've seen about 35 flags. I know Billy goes in there daily, the fleet manager, to pull out anything that pops up. So that geolocation device is actually hardwired into the vehicle itself. So anytime that computer fires, think of it like you're going to your mechanic. That same type of sensor is kicking out to Rubicon and telling you, hey, there's this fault tripped, or you have an issue with that diesel thing we talked about the other day. I didn't even know what that was. So these are sophisticated vehicles. It is reading out that information to let fleet work with it.
So
Daily.
speaking of
So
the
when you-
geo-trackers,
So, hang on one second, Mr. McAndrew. So when you say hardwired in, this geo-tracker is hardwired in, or it's just plugged into the
It's
light?
into the fuse panel. Yeah.
Okay, it's plugged into that?
Yeah.
To that panel. Can it be removed, or is it there permanently?
Yes.
It could be removed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's part
so
of
with that said, the geo-trackers, do or have they interfered with the DEF systems and causing them not to regen properly?
That's what we've been talking about recently, yes. There's a difference between an active mode and a passive mode that was identified by the fleet manager, and that's something that we're aware of. I don't know that it's an interference, but it's something that definitely flagged, yes.
So that's coming out of the fleet manager, or that's coming out of the maintenance, like truck maintenance or garage department?
Well, it's where the fleet manager, Billy Harrington, it works out of. He's in charge of the fleet and the garage and everything. So he interfaces daily with the mechanics, which is where we get a lot of real-time feedback. And this is an issue we are aware of. It is occurring, but we're actively working through it to get these things into passive mode, so it doesn't interfere as much with that system. But we've caught every time when it fires, and this does occur, so it's not, because it sends us real-time alerts. So we understand and know what's happening with our vehicles at all times while they're on the road.
So that Dept system, it works with emissions, right? And it cleans out the exhaust, like crystals and buildup in the exhaust to make
Yes.
the vehicle run more efficiently. Do we know what it is that's happening with that system?
It's from my,
It's a swap between active and passive. This particular device will tell you every 30 seconds where the truck is located. I think a management decision will be made. How quickly do we want to know where that individual is? Every 30 seconds, or is it better to be, every 2 minutes, that kind of thing? So it really comes down to that.
It's basically the amount of wattage that Geotab is putting out electrical-wise into the system is not interfering, but it's coinciding with the signals that are getting sent to that DEF system. So it's causing a code to fire or something to get skipped. It's not as, I'm not going to say the DEF system is extremely important, but this issue is not as critical as it may seem when you talk about the DEF system. It's actively being worked, and if our figure is we put that down to passive mode, it's not going to fire as many times, therefore it won't interfere with the codes that are being thrown through the DEF system. We've tested it, it works. We're just trying to figure out how to get that.
So if the geo tracker goes into passive mode, it doesn't fire as much and it won't interfere with that
Correct.
system as much as it's doing right now?
Correct.
And
And it's not happening every day, every hour. It's, oh, this one truck this week, it occurred on. or the last time it happened was 2 weeks ago, just got to reset it in real time, and we're good again.
It's nearly a real-time reset.
Yeah.
And then when you say real-time reset, we're just pulling the geo tracker out, or
Yep.
you're removing it?
Yeah, kind of like when you reset something, you unplug it, reset.
it back in.
Yeah.
How does the driver know that it's not operating properly? Does the driver know that it's not operating properly, or is that something that's seen by the fleet manager?
Yeah, no, these drivers understand when their DEF system, the truck will throw a code and let them know, and then that's when we bring it in, we figure it out. It's usually the geotab, our DEF systems are federally regulated, they're very precise pieces of equipment, so when you identify an issue with that, it's pretty easy to identify where and when that issue is occurring, because there's so much that goes into them. So it's not something that we're super concerned about. It's just a problem that another little hump we have to get over and figure out where the passive mode has to get turned down to in order to make everything run as smoothly as possible.
So when that's not firing, is it cutting down on fuel efficiency, or is it just, it's not cleaning the system so there's more buildup in the
More
in the
buildup,
exhaust?
more buildup. But those, once it's fixed, starts to clean itself again.
Okay.
So-
Do we know if that has any effect on the computer system? I mean, all modern vehicles have a computer system. Is it interfering with, I mean, at some level, it's interfering with the computer system, but is it doing any kind of damage to?
Those devices have been in place in those vehicles for 3 years. So this is something that I would flag as, now that we are really using the system and we're seeing it daily, we're going to find these things and address it. So the fact that it's been there for 3 years and this hasn't flagged just tells us that we're paying a little closer attention to these things and working through them.
If this was a critical mass issue, you would have heard about it way before this, you know?
Okay.
All right?
So at this point in time, moving forward, we're looking at about $32,000 a year. Now, is it every 3 years, it is every 2 years, or it's annually?
There's going to be a cost structure out annually for it, so that's what will come down to council to review.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Take about 5 minutes, and we'll be back once we get these all cleaned up.